This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today it's all about eating cake. We're going to be shoving that stuff right in our mouth, trying to amass the most points by bartering and trading and negotiating. Today we're looking at Let Them Eat Cake, a game set in sort of the French Revolutionary time period. It is for 3 to 6 players, pure negotiation here. Let me show you how it's played. I'll see you on the other side. And let them eat cake. That's what you're trying to do, eat cake. Everyone starts with 2 starter cakes of values of 1, and they pick the color that they're going to be playing and taking 3 pawns of those. They'll also get 3 medals, and you'll have voting cards for all the other players. In this case, it's a total 6-player game, so you have cards for all the other ones. If this player was not playing, then that voting card would be out of there, and I would be able to vote for the other 4 players in the game. If you're playing with less than 5 players, you'd actually get a second card of each of these, so you'd have 2 voting cards for each of those players. And in the middle of the table, there'll be a face of stack-up generals that will be used as a form of sort of currency in the game. 3 medals, and you'll have a head of committee token, and the pantry deck, which will have more cake and more generals. Let's talk about the flow of the game. Now, each of the rounds goes through 5 different phases, and each of these phases is going to have mostly voting going on in them in negotiation. At the beginning of the game, this head of committee token is going to be given to somebody. That player will then be the starting one. That's the head of committee, but we actually do a vote then to see who gets this token. Now, this token is important because you'll be able to break ties, and you'll get some medals for it. So let's talk about voting. Now, to start the game, you'll have a voting card of all the other players, and we'll discuss who wants to be the head of committee, and we'll talk about it. These cards will not be up like this. They'd be in your hand, and as votes happen, these will be, face down after they're used, face down after they're used, and you do not get your voting cards back until all of them have been used, which means in a 5 or 6 player game, everybody will be voted for once before anybody that you know will be voted for twice by you. So what's going to happen is everyone's going to talk, they're going to negotiate. Now, negotiation in this game is huge. It's pretty much the whole game. You can negotiate for pretty much anything except your voting cards to give to somebody, or these pawns, which we'll talk about what they do in a minute. But you can vote and, you can give them anything. You can give them some of your cake cards. You could give them some of your general cards. You could give them some of your medals. You could pretty much do anything, and you don't have to keep binding agreements. And so this is a very open-ended negotiation game. So when I'm ready to vote and everyone's ready to vote, they put their voting card face down. Once everybody's card is face down, they will then flip it up. So let's say here I voted for the blue player. Now this is important that this is where the pawns come in. This means that there's 3 votes for blue because I have 3 pawns left. If I only had 2 pawns, that would be worth 2 blue votes and 1 blue vote. So you would look at who voted for who, you would count the amount of pawns for that vote, and you would see who has the most votes. That person would win that vote. In this case, it's for the head of committee. Anytime there's a tie, the player who has currently the head of committee will break the ties, and of course you're going to try to bribe them in order to break the tie in your favor. So let's say actually I won. I was the head of committee. I get this. Everyone's voting cards just get turned face down. We like to keep them under our cards like that. And so I'm the head of committee. First thing that gets to happen is if there are any medals left in the center, I get to take one. I'll show you what these medals do in just a moment, but they are very important in the game. It shows you how much honor I have. Now, after that, if there's any here, I have a choice. I can either give any one medal, if there is one, to any player, or I can force any player to hand in a medal and lose it to the center. So I can make a friend or make an enemy or pay someone back for later. And anything that's ever given or medals given or taken are always done with the middle unless stated otherwise. So I could say, hey, okay, I want to be your friend. You can take this and I'll give it to another player. Then we'd go to the next phase. And so after head of committee, we're going to go to the enemy of the revolution. Now, the enemy of the revolution is the one that has the least amount of medals. This is why medals is important. Now, if people are tied for the least amount of medals, they would get voted upon. And in this case, we go through a negotiation and a vote like normal, and then we see who it is. If it's a tie, this guy always breaks tie. The one who has, basically won the vote for being the enemy of the revolution has to place their pawn on the guillotine because their head is now on the chopping block. Now, I'll tell you how to get these generals later, but If the person with the least amount of medals that would normally be on the chopping block has the most generals, more than everybody else in the game, then they have too much power to be able to be on the chopping block. So that's just another currency in the game. So here we go, we have that person on the guillotine. Then we get to vote for who the guillotine operator is. Like normal, we go through negotiation and voting. Now in this case, the person on the chopping block won't vote for the guillotine operator, but once that player is set, the guillotine operator has two choices. They can either chop this guy's head off and kill him, or they can give them grace. Now, if they kill him, they would just put like this and go, oh no, and then they drop me. Essentially that pawn is dead. That pink player only have one less pawn for the rest of the game. Now, if this player dies, they get to take up to 3 medals that are in the center if there are any remaining. So they would take this one, and they take up a face-up general. We'll talk a little bit more about what these do in just a moment. If this player did not want to kill them, they could give them grace and keep them alive on this platform, and they would take it back to themselves. But in order to do that, that player would lose honor. So they would actually have to take one of their honors. If I was the guillotine operator and I gave them grace and let them live, I put it there. So this person better be giving me a lot of stuff in order to stop them from getting killed. The next we look and we vote for who the secretary is. And again, you negotiate, barter, and trade and things like that to see who's going to be the secretary. The secretary will flip up one card from the pantry deck for each of the players. In this case, there's 6 players, we flip them up. 70% of the cards in this deck are cake cards. The cake cards go from 1 to 14. So this is a really good one. This is a not so good one, obviously. And there's some generals in there as well. So what happens is the person who the secretary is will put these 6 and they will choose which person is going to get each of these. Again, bribery and past deals matter here. So they'll basically put these cards in front of each of the players. And finally, we vote for who the food inspector is. Now this is pretty cool because let's say all these other people got these good cakes. I got the bad one. Let's say I'm trying to lobby to be the food inspector, and well, let's say I get to be the food inspector. I got a really bad cake. I can say that all the cake that round is not good, it's bad. So everyone has to turn in those cards that they just got, unless I get some compensation for it, of course. Or I could just say, the cake's good and everybody keeps it. Anytime you keep cake in this game, it's face down, so nobody really knows how many points you have in the game. Now, if the cake is safe, you can actually take it. If it's a bad one like this, you can say, hey, let them eat cake. You can take this, put it face down back in the bottom of the pantry deck where you got it, and you get to steal a medal from someone else. Remember, this is really important because the lowest medal is always on the chopping block each round. Now you would continue this over and over and over again until the game ends, but keeping in mind that when these voting cards are used, again, they'll all use one at a time, and then once you use them all, they all come back in your hands. But we haven't yet talked about the generals, so let's talk about what these cards do. Now, 3 ways to spend and use your generals. One is if you're unhappy with the way a vote came out, you can spend one of your generals. Generals always go back to their respective decks on the table. They don't get discarded from the game. In this case, you would force a revote. Those cards that were used to vote are used. They can't be used again until they get back in their player's hand, but you cause a revote. If you spend a second general, you can, during the secretary's phase, is grab any one piece of cake you want before anybody else. The last one is you can spend all 3 of them and have a coup, which is before a vote, you actually determine who the winner is without even voting. Now, anytime you do this, you spend these, but you also lose a Medal of Honor as well. Now, the game can end in 3 ways. One is somebody just gets 40 or more cakes, and then whoever has the most cakes wins. The second is someone dies, meaning their last pawn is put to the guillotine and dead. Any remaining living player that has the most cake wins. And the last way is the pantry deck runs out, and then whoever has the most cake wins. Now, I typically like negotiation games, and I have a group that also really likes them. And this is a pretty polarizing one. If you don't like negotiation games, trading, things like that, absolutely stay away from this because that's the game that this is. It's purely negotiation. If you like that side of things, this is one I enjoyed quite a bit. It felt fresh and new and different from many of the other negotiation games I've played. Now, one of the things that's really interesting is that mechanism of the voting, where you have a certain amount of cards and you can only vote for one person until all your cards are gone, and then you get them back. So the next time you can vote for that same person is later, and that opens up a couple of interesting things that happens in the game. Number one is as you start to go through the rounds and your cards start to dwindle down, sometimes you're not voting for who you really want to be that role. Sometimes you're voting for someone to be in that role because you don't want them to get the role that's next or 2 from now. Like, hey, I don't want that person to be the food inspector, so I'm going to vote for him now because otherwise I might end up with them. So it's some interesting things where you're kind of forced to vote a little bit ways where you might not expect to. Also, it also causes later in the game, things that you did earlier really hold weight, because when it comes down to it, everyone's gonna have to vote for you for something. And when it comes down and there's some tough choices between just 2 or 3 cards to vote for, they'll remember that time you screwed them over, made them pay a medal as the head of committee, or when you stole a medal from them by, you know, putting your cake back in and stuff like that. So it's really interesting how those things sort of come back. So overall, I liked the game. I liked how each of the pieces sort of linked together between the resources of, you know, the medals of always being the lowest, the generals doing one thing, and they all sort of link together where it's just really interesting, where you kind of want to be a specific role, but then sometimes you don't. Like, hey, you know what? I wouldn't mind you actually killing me right now. I have 3 guys. There's 3 medals there. I'm gonna get 3 medals and a general. That's okay. But you know what? If there's no medals there, oh, I really don't want to die. Please, you know, put a medal in for, you know, lose some honor. I'll give you some cake. You know, and it's just really interesting how everything just is really interesting in this game. I really enjoyed it. Sometimes it might feel like you don't have as much control as you want because, you know, you're getting rid of those cards and you can't get them back till you get them all. But it makes you really work on and with people and negotiate with people that you normally wouldn't do. So it's definitely different, definitely fresh. If you like negotiation games, I would check it out. On a negative side, the production could have been better. The guillotine does not fit into the box put together. And even just after the few times that I put this thing together, it's already starting to wear out the edges and stuff like that. The pawns could have been like cool little French, you know, military or generals or things like that, or people dressed up like the you know, the revolution. So they could have done some things better here production-wise, but overall, I enjoyed the game. And if you like negotiation, this is going to be one that you should check out. That's Let Them Eat Cake.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for backing me on Kickstarter and making this season become a reality. I'd like to especially thank those here that have backed me at the credit level. Now, these video reviews are also available by audio on our podcast. It's the intros and the final thoughts on GameBoyGeek.com. Click podcast.